Surviving Reality contains explicit content full of snark and sarcasm that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Surviving Reality.
I'm Corey.
And I'm Carly, and we are here today to talk about the Traitors Season 3, Episode 4, I Will Bury You Under the Sand.
Under the sand?
Yeah, that was a direct quote from Bob the Drag Queen.
Yes, it was. But I don't think sand is normally where you would bury people.
Bury them under the dirt?
I guess, yeah. I mean, that would be the phrase that would come to mind first for me.
Maybe Bob's mentally on a beach trying to stay tranquil through all of this. Man, this is an episode. They are coming out hot.
It was a lot to take in last week on our recap because they dropped 3 episodes in one go to start it off for season 3 here.
Yeah, I feel like we had a lot to get through in a short amount of time, but now we have a little bit more available to us to really start picking this apart.
We didn't even get to theorize too much at the end of the last episode. I got a little distracted with how do you get out of their hiding spot, which they were in, because if you may recall, they were in the bookcase. The wine cellar? What is that called? They were referring to it as a wine cellar.
I think it's a cellar. It's a secret room, but you can't tell that it's there because it's a bookcase that opens. But nobody has seen it open yet. Although, wasn't it in other seasons?
Yes. It's been used multiple times.
Nobody studied the castle before they came on here?
They didn't know.
Well, before we get into it, it is possible that this time next week there will not be the platform previously known as TikTok. So if you follow us over there, make sure that you head over to, I guess at this point, it's just YouTube right now.
YouTube.
You can find us at Surviving Pod there. We're also trying to set up a Blue Sky account. We got flagged as spam, so we're going to see how that works out in the long run.
But that was more of a Twitter replacement. Nothing's going to be able to replace TikTok. Let's be honest.
It's true. All right. Well, now that we got that bummer out of the way, let's get into this. We left off the last episode. Not everyone. The Traitors were in the cellar. Danielle, Bob the Drag Queen, Boston Rob, and Carolyn were all trying to figure out who they were going to murder in plain sight.
They had to shortlist 3 names to then place these 3 people into caskets and then eventually choose one of them to murder that night. So this was kind of the panic one where you just need to pick 3 names. There's not a lot of time to deliberate. You can't talk about it too much. So they just kind of threw 3 names out there and then they'll think about it later for how they're going to strategize around the actual murder itself.
But in the meantime, I guess they weren't being quiet enough because there were multiple people who were walking in and out of this room. So this is what makes this task particularly difficult, is that the bar is right by the door to the cellar. And there are people coming in and out of the bar pretty much all night. And the last person we saw there was Gabby.
Gabby heard some rustling. She heard some noise over at that side of the bar, and so she suspected something. She did recognize one voice, Danielle. So she knew, I better get out of there, because I might have just walked in on something here that I don't know what I'm privy to at this point. So she did the right thing, as any baby deer would, and she fled to safety. She's one of the Bambis.
I can tell you she's growing on me.
I thought she was going to be just quick fodder, easily tricked and manipulated sort of as a faithful who would be carried willingly to the end and then finish a game with a traitor and then be completely shocked that she'd been fooled the whole time. She's actually pretty close to catching a couple of traitors here.
I think she's a lot smarter than we gave her credit for at first. I do think it's a little bit of the way she talks. She's given the Kardashian, Paris Hilton fake baby voice.
And then it's also the group, the collective group, the Bambis. It's hard to take that group seriously of seeking out a traitor.
Yeah, I think we're wrong, though. I'm starting to feel like Robin is the one who's going to get taken to the end. The faithful who is tricked the entire game.
I don't know how Robin hasn't drawn more attention because everything she does is so traitor-like. Every deflection that she has, everybody that she keeps protecting, and then the people she's going after are completely faithful. She's been wrong about everybody.
Yeah, but it either goes one of 2 ways. You're very opinionated up front and you become the dumb faithful who's going to the end on a traitor's coattails, or you become the faithful who's suspicious or people are suspicious of. Seems like she's going the first way, at least for right now. I think Gabby had a smart move getting out of there, making sure nobody saw her. Other people might have stuck around to see.
She had one little piece of information. I heard Danielle in the wine cellar, and so she was hanging on to that. Dylan's also getting close. He's kind of sniffing around in the wine cellar too. So this is after all of the traitors have vacated now, and they were kind of trying to play casual and go back to walking around the castle with the rest of everyone else. But it was a little bit awkward.
I am enjoying the fact that Dylan is like the one person that has no real fame attached to them here. He's kind of just like your average Joe who got stuck in this castle. And he's on to everyone.
To an extent.
To an extent. He does veer from that path later on, but his gut instincts are correct right now. He saw the door to the bookcase open. Why did they not close that behind them when they left the room?
I think they did.
No,
some of
it
them
was
did.
open.
No, I know, but like some of them did. And then I think as more people came out or were coming in, there were other people who were like peeking in around that area too. And so it was wide open when Dylan came through to look around.
And he's not just casually looking. It's almost as if he has the room memorized. Maybe he's the only one who watched previous seasons and has a map of this place in his mind. But he's looking at things like, it looks like something was here, but now it's not.
I think we're too late. I think something already happened here.
She's correct.
Well, and I know Danielle had to kind of monitor this because you have to see if somebody's getting close, you got to know what they know. So
Yeah.
Danielle was back in there with him.
I wasn't thrilled by the idea of her going back into the cellar.
But
that seemed like it was risky.
I think it played out in their favor because then you at least know that he was on to you and that they didn't actually figure out exactly what was going on in there.
Well, luckily, Alan breaks this up. He's ending the search of the cellar. It's time to head outside and get our 3 nominees for a possible murder in their coffins.
So that would be Nikki, Sierra, and Jeremy.
So those are the 3 names that the traitors wrote down when they were in the cellar.
They're each given a chance for some final words, potentially, because they're going to close these coffins and send everyone else to bed. So this is the last time, potential last time, that you're going to be able to see these people.
What did you think of the picks?
That was what it came down to. Was these seemed like this was just panic. This was not strategized. They just had to pick 3 names. And I think Nikki and Sierra are people who are kind of middle of the pack, not really overtly faithful, not really traitor suspicious people. So that was why they went with them. I think it was a good call that they didn't put anybody who was a traitor in amongst the group, because this group seemed paranoid enough and looking hard enough for a clue of any kind where they're going to latch on to one of the 3 people probably went in there as a diversion.
They did think ahead on that.
So that was good. I think that was the good call because they thought about having Bob the drag queen jump in, which, quick PSA, Bob's pronouns are he, him, she, her. So by default, we've kind of been
Using them interchangeably.
going interchangeably, but also if we're speaking about, there are multiple people named Bob on the show right now. And so one has preferred pronouns of he, him, and then Bob the drag queen has he, him, she, her. So we've been kind of going with she, her in some of those contexts just to help clarify who we're talking about. So just a quick FYI. But thanks to everyone who brought that up after the first episode.
Everyone gets to have an opportunity to make a final plea. They're kind of weird. They have different strategies here. Sierra basically tells them to fuck off, that she's going to hunt for them. She's here to find a traitor.
She swears multiple times. Yeah. Drops a couple F-bombs.
I think that she was hoping the faithfuls would sense that that proved that she was a faithful.
It smells like traitor diversion. It sounds like it's an oversell.
The problem is when everybody is so paranoid and activated, they just start seeing things that they want to see or things that aren't there. It's really not out of her regular behavior. Nikki tries to go with the sell of, I can help you win more money for the pot. They don't have a lot of money right now. What was it, like $35,000 is all they made from the first few challenges?
They banked 0 on the clown balloon maze, which everyone is still covered in glitter too, by the way, which that would annoy me.
Throughout the entire episode.
I would need to go take a shower. Get me out of here. Whatever I need to do, I don't care. Goodbye, everyone. All 3 of you could not come to breakfast tomorrow. Can I go take a shower? I don't really care.
It was still stuck to some people's scalps in the final round table.
Jeremy comes up with a different strategy. He's telling the traitors, if you keep me around, I'll work with you.
Did he not realize that everyone else was there? Like, did he think it's just the 3 of them and the traitors?
No, they're standing right there.
I'm just saying, why would you say that in front of all of the faithfuls, that you're willing to turn and work alongside the traitors to help them get to the end, which means eliminating the other faithfuls? That's your pitch?
I don't know if that was his way of being a lightning rod for the murder then. The decision that the traitors still have to make of the 3 of them, I think it seemed like he was trying to make them pick him. Because if he had said that,
I don't think so.
But like, if he had said that and then they didn't murder him.
Oh, you're going to go with the round table. You're going to get banished.
Yeah, that would have been so weird.
Well, this is where I think they made a major mistake. Looking at these 3 initially going into the coffins, I would say you're going to murder Jeremy. That's the right decision. He's kind of on to some of them. He said Danielle's name quite a bit. He's a very good player from Survivor. That's who I would have gotten rid of. But listening to the pleas, I would say it's a waste to get rid of him because they're going to banish him at the round table.
There's so much suspicion now if he stays around, because if you murder him, then I guess then that means that people would think that Nikki and Sierra are both traitors potentially, and they could only murder Jeremy. So is that what that ends up being? Is that the route that they had to go because they needed to pick someone to murder and they couldn't pick one of the traitors to be murdered? Were these good picks? Are these the 3 that you would have gone with? I mean, obviously, we didn't have to pick in a hidden bookshelf in a bar while everybody's walking around the castle around us.
I think Jeremy was a good one. I don't know. It's up in the air for me about Nikki and Sierra. They kind of both just feel like throwaways.
I feel like they blend. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be easy for people to now accuse him of things because everyone's convinced that there has to be at least one traitor in the coffins.
I would still want Robin. I would want Robin in the mix on everything. She's a great cover right now, whether she knows it or not.
Oh, yeah.
So I would have her in the mix for anything where you could potentially think it might be a traitor.
I also think that if you get her nervous, she's going to start acting weird as fuck.
Well, and she'll start talking, too. Mm-hmm. She's just going to ramble on.
I think they could have done better.
I mean, this was okay, but then I agree with you. Jeremy was the threat. Probably should remove him from the game. But then based on what he said, made it seem kind of silly to pick him.
Well, we won't know until breakfast. And before we find out who has been murdered, there's some conversations going on.
Oh, you missed my favorite part of the episode, though, was when Alan was closing all the coffins, and then he was sending everyone to bed. And so everybody just had to walk back into the house, and Tom is just staring at the caskets, and he's like, "Go, Tom, go. Go.
No need to linger.
Go back inside."
I don't know what is up with him. He's providing a lot of comic relief, but he doesn't know that he is.
He's the butt of the joke.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the best people on reality TV.
It is good. Yeah, especially in this circumstance, too. There are so many people who do not know how the game works, can't keep up with all the complexities of what's going on.
Did he think he was going to see something that if he just waited long enough, there would be an extra clue that nobody else picked up on?
I don't know. I think he was just
lost?
Something was hitting, at that point for him.
He was in a haze.
And so he lost track of how long he'd been staring at the casket, at the coffins.
There are just a few people in the breakfast room, and they start talking about theories, as they do when they start to gather on breakfast mornings.
This was where Robin is defending so many people who are traitors, which it's going to be strange if nobody makes that connection of every single person that Robin has blindly defended and openly defended, publicly defended. I would think that she is definitely amongst the traitors then.
Well, this is what I'm saying. This is the problem. You cannot be so opinionated. And she's opinionated in both directions, both about who the traitors are and then who they're not. And she's pretty sure that after what they just witnessed last night, it's got to be Nikki and Jeremy, that both of them are traitors. And so the only person who could possibly not be walking in that door this morning is going to be Sierra. Gabby's like, all right, well, I have some information that might change your mind. Last night, when I was going to the bar, I heard Danielle's voice coming from inside the bookcase, which was kind of weird. Do you think that's weird?
I don't know why Robin decided to bring this up, Gabby and Robin, because I think Robin had asked Gabby, do you want to share this? Do you want to bring this up with everybody? And Gabby said, yeah, sure. There's your mistake right there. You needed to not let that information get out. You needed to tell a small group of people and then swear them to secrecy, keep that information so then that way you can utilize it. Because then if people start talking about the bookcase and Danielle naturally says, I wasn't in the bookcase, I wasn't near that, even though I don't think she would have a reason to lie about it, but you could catch her in a lie, potentially.
I agree. Breakfast, there's too many people there.
Everybody's there. Well, I mean,
it's too hard to keep an eye on how everybody is reacting. And it's too much opportunity for other people to jump in. It's like a round table, really. The conversations tend to go sideways. You're right. She should have saved that for a smaller group.
Because then she's taking it as Danielle defended immediately that, yeah, I was in there and I was in there with Dylan. We were walking around. We had stopped in there. We'd heard people were checking out that room. Something seemed off. So she's able to dismiss it right away. And so now Gabby's just kind of questioning her intuition again because she thought something was amiss when the bookshelf was closed and she heard Danielle's voice talking behind the door.
It's like, girl, listen to your gut.
You are so close. Because then I think that's the distinction that you needed to make was, oh, were you there at any other point? Was the door open or was the door closed? And then you can have some of those pieces then to put together to figure out if Danielle's lying.
Well, she admitted to being in there. So did Dylan, which we know the two of them were in there together, but it was after the traitors had already been in the room. And then weirdly, Bob the drag queen admits having been in the cellar too. Why? There was no reason to have to do that.
Nope. Yeah. Absolutely no reason.
It was a moment of paranoia, in my opinion, because what if Gabby heard more or saw more, but this was the only thing that they were sharing with the group was that they had heard Danielle's voice?
That could be a good reason.
But that's what I'm saying. That comes from a place of paranoia, of not just waiting it out, seeing where things go.
I think it was, I hope that Gabby's able to piece that together and kind of recall back to that after they learn more information today.
Well, that was like the first thing that happened in this episode where Boston Rob's eyes got real big, seeing something that Bob the drag queen did.
So everybody makes it into breakfast except for
Jeremy.
You guessed it. It's Jeremy.
Again, I feel like that's a waste.
They're flashing to the discussion that took place. And I was worried because they were saying that the traitors needed to walk around the coffins and then put the nail in the coffin of the person that they selected. I thought that they were still going to be in there and maybe they would be able to hear the discussion. I thought that they were going to make the traitors discuss.
You think they stood right by the coffins and had the discussion of who they were going to get rid of?
Well, they did outside the door. It was like up on the balcony.
It was far enough away. All she heard was footsteps.
Well, I thought that that was going to make it harder for them to deliberate because then they had to make this decision very quickly. And now you wouldn't be able to make a case for which person that you think should be eliminated from the game at this point because you can't discuss it with them. I think that would have been an interesting component where they're not able to talk about it before they get out there. And if you do talk about it, you run the risk of being heard by the other people who you're not murdering. That wasn't how it went.
No,
but
I don't think the producers thought that far, that someone would be listening and analyzing the footsteps of the people who walked around them when they could not hear, they shouldn't have really been hearing or seen anything from inside the coffin to try to decipher whose footsteps they were. Like, that's a whole nother level.
But I mean, you got to go with the information that you have.
Shouldn't have shared it with everybody.
I think she should have kept that to herself too. Because Danielle got very curious when Nikki's explaining the differences of weight distribution in people's footsteps around the coffins last night.
Yeah, she's wondering because I think the real point is that Nikki was saying that one of the sets of footsteps was very light, and she's trying to imply that one of the traitors must be a woman.
So Danielle gets nervous and is trying to clarify, is that what you're saying? And Nikki has to confirm. But Nikki's already suspicious of Danielle. So she's had conversations with Jeremy before Jeremy was murdered that he was telling her, keep an eye on Danielle. And so Nikki's taken that to heart now and is noticing, that's interesting. I thought it was crazy that none of the traitors are still listening to Carolyn. Carolyn was the only voice of reason amongst the traitors of choosing who to murder. And she said, Jeremy is a terrible decision to make right now. But Danielle was absolutely set on getting him out of here because he was on to her, which that only adds suspicion to you.
Well, and they're really going through all the Survivor players. You got to think that Carolyn's starting to get a little suspicious.
Well, it was Housewives and Survivor are the folks that they're trying to get out of here in quick fashion.
Their first strategy of getting rid of Housewives so that people think it's a cover because one or all of the traitors are housewives, that's really fallen flat. Nobody even talked about it this episode.
Not anymore. No, yeah, we've shifted on to totally other things. Steered away from that.
Well, after breakfast, everybody splits off into groups and they start having conversations. Tom has a new theory. So you know that they are so much closer. They're just inching closer and closer to catching a traitor at the round table.
It's Sierra, of course.
Oh, he's pretty sure that when they did that last night, they didn't murder Sierra. They recruited her to be another traitor.
What a twist.
Like, based on what?
The footsteps?
What's it even based on?
Maybe that's what he was doing on the stairs. He was astral projecting. And so he was leaving his soul at the coffins. So then that way he could see what was happening. And yes, he could confirm recruitment is what took place in addition to murder.
I wonder if his original theory was that they were going to recruit Jeremy after that plea that he made, but then Jeremy didn't show up to breakfast. So he had to adjust what he was thinking, and he still wanted to volunteer something to the group.
He only has one theory, and so he just had to swap out another face for that.
I don't know. He's in a whole nother world. Like, truly, he's on another plane compared to everybody else here.
So while there is some lingering suspicion of Danielle, Tom's coming up with his own wild theories. Wes is leaning towards Nikki now because it seemed to be a collective idea that at least one traitor, if not two traitors, were in the coffins as well. So if they're eliminating Jeremy after he said that he would partner up with them, meaning he's a faithful, and we know now 100% that he was a faithful because he was murdered, that's strange. So they're trying to get all the theories in line here.
It seemed like Wes's whole idea hinged on the fact that Nikki is a wrestler and that the way she's playing the game doesn't seem to align with her persona.
She's more quiet, more reserved. And so this was an opportunity for Nikki to get involved in a way and perform a little bit. And that's kind of in line with her wrestling persona and her character for that.
But didn't she play into her skills as a wrestler by saying, I'm strong and I will help you win competitions?
I mean, that seemed more of a faithful line, but is that a double bluff? I think the only person who's onto the double bluff right now is Gabby, because that was how they wrapped up breakfast, where she was the only person to throw out the idea that, well, they could have put no traitors in the coffins, and everybody else is like, no,
that's stupid.
They wouldn't do that. So she's already being immediately dismissed. She's the closest one to the truth, and then immediately snuff that out.
Like the second time in the same setting at breakfast, she was onto something and just nobody listened.
No, yeah. So now another theory that's rising is Dylan is going after Bob the drag queen, but they don't have numbers. It seems like it's him and Dolores. Dylan and Dolores are on the same page about Bob the drag queen, but they don't want to bring it up to anybody because it's just the two of them. And Bob is so well liked in the house by everyone else.
They know that if they accuse Bob and word gets out, that they could be the next ones who are dead.
Oh, yeah.
They could be going home.
It would be opposition.
So they decide to wait it out, which was a smart move. But first, we're going to go to a challenge. And again, the prize pot is much smaller than it should be at this point. We only have $35,000. And this challenge has the opportunity to win another $20,000. There are also shields that are being given out. And Wes really, really wants one going into this because of the fact that He is gunning for Nikki. And if you're going to bring someone's name up at the round table and they don't go home and they're a traitor, or they do go home and the other traitors know that you're onto them, you're probably the next person who's going to get murdered. Like, that tells you how sure he is that he needs to go into this round table and bring up Nikki.
Well, he doesn't have much to go off of. And he admits that multiple times throughout this too, is that it's not a pure science. There's no DNA. There's no fingerprints. He's just kind of going off of his reasoning and piecing things together on how she's behaving and what's taken place and what he's seen in the game.
Like, okay, but we find out later they've only been here, the new people, for 2 days. Maybe wait a little longer before you start accusing somebody.
I think that he feels like he needs to provide some sort of value to the group, though, because they're still the outsiders. They're the 3 new guys, the 3 new gamers who have been dropped in here.
West Derek and Boston Rob.
So there's been suspicion around them being traitors too, or at least one of them being a traitor. So I think he's trying to lead the charge as a faithful and kind of go that direction.
It's an interesting thought because later on we do have every single one of the new people pointing fingers at other people at the round table. So maybe it's let's get ahead of it before they come for us.
And it's splitting off. Yeah, you're trying to not present as a unified front because you don't want it to seem like there's an alliance, even though they were all very upfront when they were entering the game that they needed to stick together, but it doesn't seem like that's really playing out.
The way this challenge is going to work is they have 45 minutes and there are pieces of statues jumbled down at the bottom of the hill. They need to carry them up to the spot where they need to assemble these statues. There are 10 of them in total. There are 10 platforms for them to build on. There are 18 people here, each represented by a head with their name on it. They're going to have to choose which head they put on each of these 10 statues, and those people will get a shield.
So this becomes a pretty quick split decision where some people are, as soon as the horn is blown and the mission starts, people are grabbing their heads with their names on it and running them up the hill immediately, which I feel like that wasn't fair because there were some people who wanted to start discussing things immediately, which we do not have time for that. But what do you need to do? You need to build a body for each one. So I would say leave all of the heads. If anybody picks up a head, they have ill motive. And I get it that you're trying to protect yourself or show that you're a faithful who's concerned about getting murdered. But we need to build the bodies before we put the heads on top. So everybody grab a body and let's move the bodies up the hill. And then we can kind of decipher whose heads we're going to be using once we get up here.
No, I was not surprised by the way this went at all.
No,
there's not enough time. Everybody's
rush.
Panicked. Nobody wants to. There's not a leader really in the group.
Bob the Drag Queen kind of tried to, but then she realized this is just chaos. Everybody's just going. There's already 3 people who are running up the hill with their heads on their shoulders and just running. And so whatever, just grab your stuff, get it up the hill.
And the 3 who got up there first with their heads were Tom, Wes, and Dylan. So everybody's looking at them because that was selfish.
Well, it's because Tom has such a good theory right now with Chriselle. It's got to be Chriselle.
Tom needs to be the most comfortable person here. No, hold on. Tom and Sam. Tom and Sam are going to hang around for a long time. I forget that Sam Azari is even in existence on this show.
I keep forgetting that he's here. I do.
You know, I heard that he's not allowed to talk about Britney Spears. That's why in one of the earlier episodes when somebody asked him something about her, he just said no comment.
Oh, great. What, did he sign an NDA or something?
Yeah, he's literally not allowed to speak about her.
Well, and then at breakfast in this episode, he said that somebody complimented his headband or something, and he said, oh yeah, thanks, it's Britney's. And Gabby was like, it's Britney's? Like Britney Spears?
Britney Spears does not own headbands,
no,
Gabby.
It's Britney, who's here in the house.
There's a Britney who's here.
Britney at the table.
It's the only one I'm allowed to talk about or interact with.
It's Britney, bitch.
But how do you get cast on a show and you're Britney Spears' ex-husband and you can't say a word about her? Like, why are you here?
That's why nobody knows who you are.
I mean, not that I want him to talk about her or spill the tea about her private life, but like, that's your only claim to fame.
But also, what a dud. I haven't seen him with a commentary a take.
No, he's
on
worse than Tom.
Nothing. He has nothing to contribute. I mean, Tom's at least coming up with wild theories that are completely wrong. So that's entertaining.
And doing weird shit.
But there's
Sam
not,
just like
Sam,
exists.
Yeah, Sam is just dead weight at this point.
Well, I didn't know he has such strong feelings about him.
Well, me either, because I keep forgetting that he's here. He just keeps popping up.
Enrages me every time I remember.
So disappointed.
I got sad during this challenge because of Bob Harper.
Oh, Bob Harper.
He felt like he was going to really provide value to the group in the challenges, and he's struggling to even get the first piece up the hill. I kind of forgot that he had a massive heart attack.
Yeah, that was a big one because that was recent too. That was like 6 years ago. So, I mean,
6 or 7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. So it's like for being known as a physical trainer and having a very physical task in front of you that you can't do, this is tough. Yeah, this is really difficult.
I'm not sure how long he's going to last in the castle because I feel like this was a big moment of realization for him. And I'm not sure he knows how he's going to, like, what his position in the group is going to be now.
Well, it feels like, yeah, I mean, like that was his contribution, or that's what he was expecting his contribution to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now he hasn't been able to fulfill on that. So it's kind of that problem. But then also, you're doing things that if somebody looked at it and then didn't remember that he had a heart attack recently, and they're like, why can't Bob do this? And then is he a traitor? Is he trying to sabotage this? But usually the traitors would be wanting to get money, though. I guess if he had a statue body piece that they needed to get up there and he was being too slow about that, that could have been a problem. But you start to think of, is this a traitor sabotaging a mission? Or at least I do, because I'm 100% focused on the game.
No. Okay. Okay, Tom.
If I were there, I would think about that, because then
it kind of made me want to cry.
I know, but that's the point. Like, that's the perfect traitor thing to do in that moment.
Yeah. Well, everybody's struggling. They're fighting. They always make it seem like they're not going to finish the challenge. At one point, there was one body assembled, and it seemed like they had like no time left.
Yeah, if it took them 30 minutes to get one, I don't know how they did the other 9 in that 15 minutes.
I don't even watch the time clock on this show anymore because it's complete bullshit.
Every time.
They assembled all 10 bodies. Tom puts his head on the first, his statue head?
Yeah.
On the first body.
Well, because what people were doing was they were setting their heads with their names at the base plate. So before they had even erected a body to place a head,
theirs.
They're claiming where their head is going to go. So that was some bullshit right out the gate.
We have Tom, and then both Bobs get one. I'm not sure how Bob Harper got his statue.
He was being helped along. Who was that? Was that Brittany?
I thought he was stuck at the bottom of the hill the whole time.
I mean, he was halfway up. He had left. I think he had convinced someone to help him with his stuff, and then he would go back and help them get their stuff. Who was that? Was that Brittany?
It was Brittany.
With the Peloton class?
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Not a good ad for Peloton.
No, that's the second piece of bad PR Peloton has had on television. First, we had someone die on the Sex and the City show, and now we have this woman saying, look, I thought that I was in like peak condition from all of the Peloton classes that I had taken. Did not help me with this.
This is different. It's a whole other different set of muscles.
Which I gotta say, that's true. I've listened to many Cody Rigsby rides where he goes on about bagels. It's not the most strenuous activity. We can have a conversation about bagels while riding.
Okay, yeah.
Dylan, Boston Rob, Chriselle, Dolores, Wes, and Danielle, all safe. They all get a shield. They all got a head on top of a statue.
So that means who's not safe? Sierra, Carolyn, Nikki, Ivar, Robin, Sam, Gabby, and Derek. Those are the ones, the remaining few, who will not have a shield.
For the murder. But they're up for the round table tonight. Everybody is. Just want to clarify for anybody who's like new to the game.
And the shields, yeah, because the shields don't protect against the round table. It only protects against murders by the traitors, which gets interesting here.
Well, you would think this seemed pretty successful because 3 traitors have shields coming out of this. That means there were 3 people who could have actually used a shield who didn't get one.
Keeping their options open.
But as soon as Alan is ready to dismiss them, Bob the drag queen adds another thought in front of the group. And he mentions that it was interesting that the new guys all put their heads up there.
Derek didn't.
Did he put his up there but not get it on top of a
Maybe
statue?
he didn't.
Maybe?
Yeah, maybe he brought his up.
No, but his strategy, remember, was that he wanted to be the helpful one.
Helpy helperson.
Because people would look at that and think that's faithful behavior.
Yeah, but then it's over the top. And if you're just trying to cash in on somebody carried it 80% of the way up and then you're trying to help them for the last 20%, that doesn't really seem helpful at that point. It seems like you're trying to take credit for what somebody else had already put all this effort into.
Yeah, maybe Bob could have run things the last 20 yards.
Or if you have like builder group who's up at the top there, so maybe just grab one thing that's kind of lighter. I can't get a grasp of how heavy these objects were, though, because some people were, it was taking 2 people at either end to lift and then carry them up the hill. There's other people who are just throwing it over their shoulder and sprinting up the hill. Are they varied in weight?
I thought that they were made of styrofoam at first.
They're definitely not styrofoam.
No, I know. It became obvious that they were heavy because when they started to drop them, they had some heft.
But Tom had scooped one up and just ran up the hill before anybody had even figured out what was going on. His was already halfway up the hill.
I mean, I think Tom is powered by some other substances
Did he?
that maybe make things feel lighter than they are. Give him superhuman strength.
He was using performance-enhancing drugs, I think is what we're alleging here. Maybe that the world record of carrying these heads up the hill is in question.
Yeah, I don't think that you can judge it based on how Tom handled the competition.
I'm starting to suspect that they had different weights, where like Bob Harper's was like 150 pounds. Because they were like, yeah, that's Bob's. Load it up. Just put a sack of quarters in there, just like.
I think Jillian Michaels is just on the inside of it. She's just stuffed inside of that statue piece.
That's the only explanation I have, is that they had varying weights based on who was bringing their heads up the hill.
Okay, you know what? I'm starting to remember The Biggest Loser, and I kind of feel like this is some karma that was coming from all of the years of yelling at people who struggled to get through physical challenges, only to realize that you too are a person who is having a very difficult time completing a challenge that you're being told should be simple for you.
To be fair, the participants on The Biggest Loser were not nearly 60-year-old men with
Some of them were.
With cardiovascular history.
I think all of them had cardiovascular histories, Corey.
The threat was there. Yes, the threat was real.
Anyway, back to everyone hearing Bob say this. Boston Rob, fucking pissed. The second time his eyeballs came out of his head this episode.
But he still plays it cool. I mean, you can tell he's upset. And then when it cuts to his ISO interviews afterwards, yes, he's very vocal about it. He doesn't say anything on the hill.
Oh, no. Well, he's not going to say anything
back.
And
that's the whole thing with the Traitors. You can't have reactions to things. You have to just gather information and remain neutral and then make your decisions.
Why did Bob do that? Because everyone is going to get upset about what's about to happen and what Rob wants to do in response to what Bob said. But Bob threw a fellow traitor under the bus in front of everybody for no reason.
I mean, I guess Bob would say that it wasn't that big of a threat because going into the round table, it was going to be Nikki and Sierra. I think that was who they had.
But you're planting a seed for the future.
Yes. Yeah. And that was noted very visibly.
Especially when you're not in a scenario where people are talking about the game, to just volunteer a thought like that, it was very unnecessary.
Yeah, not the time, not the place. It was very, very poorly delivered and not covert at all. So it didn't work out.
Well, Boston Rob decides that's it. I'm going to blindside Bob the drag queen tonight.
Rob is floating the idea now to the other gamer guys and saying, hey, it's time to go for the head of the dragon. I guess they have code names.
So dramatic. I can see that. Derek was a cop. Do you think that that's what they're using code names for?
Maybe.
People?
Yeah. Well, no, because
then you don't think that's a system that they have in place?
Because Wes immediately responds, Nikki? You mean Nikki? I'm going to go after Nikki. And Rob's like, no. Bob the drag queen. Tonight's the night.
It's like he's in the mafia. What the fuck are you talking about? No one else is following you.
Hey, by the way, I took care of that thing for you.
Well, he very quickly comes up with a plan of how he's going to get rid of Bob, which involves using other people to do it.
I mean, you can't, if you're going to betray a traitor this early in the game, you can't do that overtly, safely. You have to make it seem like this was an idea that came from the faithfuls, and then they just pick it up and run with it. So Rob's trying to fan the flames for some of that suspicion because he knows Dylan. Dylan is suspicious from day one. He's had Bob the Drag Queen on his radar.
Poor little Dylan. He's so excited to have Boston Rob want to play this game with him. And the fact that they're on the same page, like it could not get better for him right now.
So Dylan already has, yes, Boston Rob is saying Bob the Drag Queen. Dylan is on board with Bob the Drag Queen. He was already talking earlier with Dolores, but they were too afraid because they didn't think they had numbers. So now it might be ending up being a bigger thing here where we actually do have numbers to this. So Dylan goes to Ivar and he's letting Ivar know, Bob the Drag Queen, yeah, I think we're going to do this.
They work together to gather votes. We've got Dylan doing that. And then Rob has to find the other traitors. He finds Danielle and Carolyn and tells them, look, this is what's going down tonight. Bob's going home. Either way.
Well, he was stoking the fires with everyone else. And then he finds Danielle and Carolyn and lets them know, I'm hearing Bob's name all over the place. Everybody's saying Bob, which they're confused because they were like, it was supposed to be Nikki and Sierra. That was the plan, was to push them. And Rob's coming in and saying, I don't know, something happened. Everybody's saying Bob now, Bob the Drag Queen. Everybody's all over it.
His point is that we might as well just vote for Bob because otherwise it's going to look weird that we're not voting with the rest of the group. And it's a foregone conclusion already. So you might as well just vote for him.
They have it without us, so we might as well just jump on board and get behind that too, so we don't look suspicious like the odd ones out. So Danielle is completely against that.
No, I'm not going to vote for Bob the Drag Queen.
She's not doing that.
There's no way. Bob's my bestie. I will not betray Bob.
Carolyn's open to it.
I love that she waited until Danielle left the room. And then Carolyn was like, so about that thing about Bob.
But yeah, what about Bob?
I'm willing to write Bob's name down, even if Danielle's not.
And I think Carolyn picked up on the fact that Rob is playing both sides, which obviously he was, because he told Danielle, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. If we can't do that, that's okay. So when Danielle leaves and then it's just Carolyn and Rob, then they're talking about it and she goes, oh, wait, I thought you told Danielle that you're not going to vote for Bob, though. No, yeah, I'm still voting for Bob. So it is happening.
Put yourself in Carolyn's position. What would you be thinking?
Oh, you know that Rob is plotting. Rob is going out of his way right now to manufacture all of this, which you had to know. As a traitor, yes, he is doing this. So now what Carolyn should be doing is she needs to find a few faithfuls who have some suspicion in Rob. I would go for the gamer guys.
What, like right now? Not right now.
Not right now.
At a
but
later
like
date.
You need to know, like this is what your next steps are after this. Because you can't do anything right now. Rob is in the middle of a play. It's happening. So you have to make your decision. But think about what your next move is in order to make that happen. So yes, go along with Rob. Make it seem like you're on board. Good idea, Rob. And pat Rob on the back for finding out a great way to do this at this time. But in the meanwhile, you just have to be thinking, okay, how am I going to get somebody onto Rob's case and then have them go all in on Rob?
This seems like a good thing to me. If I was Danielle or Carolyn, because Bob the Drag Queen and Boston Rob are the two biggest personalities that you have to deal with in the turret. If you can eliminate one of them and then possibly get rid of Rob at some point, they have to know everyone's going to be suspicious of Rob sooner or later just because he's such a good gamer.
Yeah, and that he was added late. He was in that group of the gamer guys and stuff too. What's amazing to me is how Danielle was not a threat, but she's still been able to attract so much suspicion of being a traitor already. She hasn't really been doing anything.
It doesn't bode well for her.
No, I know, but like
I know,
it doesn't.
That's why I wouldn't hitch my star to Danielle's wagon if I was Carolyn.
Hitch your star to her wagon?
It's a saying.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. So at the round table.
No. We didn't get there yet.
Oh.
Wes
Wes.
I can't stop thinking about it that way. I know. Is it not? It's not. Is it cake?
No.
I keep saying that.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Yes.
I haven't watched Nailed It in a while.
Wes.
But Wes is still gunning for Nikki. So these are the two factions that we have right now going into the round table. Those that are going to vote for Bob the drag queen, and then those who are rallying around Wes and believing that Nikki, who was in one of the coffins, is possibly a traitor.
And so of the 18 people, you're going to need 9 votes. I thought they had maybe 8 for Bob the drag queen based on the count that I was running, because if it was going to be Rob, Carolyn,
Dylan,
Dolores, Ivar, and then I thought it was going to be the gamer guys.
No, they're all going different directions.
But so this was weird. My count going in, I was like, ooh, it's going to be close. I wasn't sure. It was right about 50%, but we were going to have to see how this plays out a little bit here.
Walking into this round table, Bob the drag queen has no idea that anything's about to go down.
Bob thinks that this is going to be, he's still on this morning of who he's expecting to have come up as the roundtable discussion. He's thinking it's going to be Nikki and it's going to be Sierra.
Which, if you're such good friends with Bob the drag queen, Danielle, you didn't give him a heads up?
Yeah, that was pretty odd.
No, watch your back. Something's going to go down. Start thinking about what you're going to say at the round table because you're going to get attacked. Nothing.
Didn't give him a heads up. Nope. I think it's because she knew that she was going to vote for Bob.
She already decided that.
Yep. And so she was saying, no, I would never. But then she was like, it's probably going to happen though.
The first person to speak is Wes.
And he's going with a direct accusation on Nikki. It's not sticking. She's just kind of flipping it back to him because he's the gamer. He's somebody who has an agenda.
Yeah, and this was disappointing because Wes has been one of the people who keeps stressing that if you're going to throw out an accusation at the round table, you have to be really confident in it. You have to have a good, compelling story because you can't just throw names out and then nothing happens and it fizzles out.
Well, no. So he didn't say any of that stuff about it needs to be a good story. It needs to do this. No, he was saying you need to say one name. You need to stick with it.
No, I feel like he said, maybe I just read a lot into what he said.
Yeah, I think he did. Because what he was saying was Dylan was saying he was going to throw out 2 names. And Wes said, no, if you're going to take a shot, take a shot. You got to pick one person and ride with it.
All right. Well, I have advice for Wes. You need to have a compelling reason as to why you're accusing somebody.
That is a great reason to bring something up. So I was confused when Wes was talking first because he seemed like he had a lot of conviction that it is Nikki based on absolutely no solid information at all.
No, it's that there must have been a traitor in one of the coffins, which again, reminder, that is not confirmed.
Nope.
You're all just assuming that they put one in there to confuse you. And that she's not enough of a showman, I guess, while playing the game.
She's been too quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, is what he's getting at here. And so this was her opportunity to perform a little bit. And so she took it. I think that's a stretch because that's all based on absolutely nothing. Unfounded.
Well, that's why it doesn't land.
So then we get Derek, the other gamer guy, who is going after Sierra because he likes Wes's theory of Nikki, but he thinks it's the wrong person. I think it's Sierra is the traitor who was placed in there. So this is shaping up like the original conversation, what everybody expected it to be from this morning.
And great police work here. He suspects Sierra because she used profanity when she made her plea to the group. And that's something that he has seen happen before as a police officer when they are interrogating people. That if you're guilty, you start cursing.
Maybe you need to talk to Sierra more because I think she swears a lot. Just on a regular basis. And that's what Dylan had to say too. I think the first word that I heard her say was a swear word.
Yeah. Also, I'm not surprised that most of the people who say swear words or basically talk to you in an interrogation end up with being guilty or being convicted of being guilty.
There you go.
Because don't talk to cops.
Well, yeah. Dylan's poor virgin ears. He had to hear Sierra's swear words.
How old do we think Dylan is?
17.
17 again?
Just the once. But it's like the drinking age in the UK. It's a little bit lower, so he's able to participate in the game. He had to get his parental consent. they had to sign the form too.
This is so stupid that Rob can't even listen to the rest of it. So he interrupts the middle of Sierra trying to defend herself. Which smart move, because we're wasting time. At some point, Alan's going to tell them that's it. They're cut off. And that has happened before, where people didn't actually get to bring an accusation because there was so much rambling that went on at the beginning of the roundtable that they never even got their opportunity.
Well, and I think Rob was waiting for Dylan to bring it up because Rob didn't want to be the one to bring it up, especially at the roundtable. You are putting a spotlight right on yourself, a target on your back moving forward.
It would have been so much better for him if Dylan would have spoken up.
Absolutely. But
I think Dylan was thinking Boston Rob's got to be the one to say it because
it was his idea.
Well, not just it's his idea. No, I think Dylan thinks it was his idea.
No,
really.
No.
He has suspected Bob since before Rob has been here in the house.
It's proven after this, after the roundtable, after the vote, there is a exchange that happens.
We'll debate that.
Okay.
I don't think Dylan had the confidence to combat any of the argument he would get back from Bob the drag queen. So he was hoping Rob would be the one to say it.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Let them argue back and forth because I don't know if I'm going to be able to. He got called misguided last week.
Yeah, you can't go after Bob again after you're going to come at her as misguided for the second week in a row. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, he does catch a stray at some point.
Oh, no.
So Rob is accusing Bob the drag queen and everyone is shocked, especially Tom. Tom's face. Did you see? He's looking both directions.
Those are my
can't believe what's happening.
The ping pong camera reactions where if it's two people across the table that are arguing with each other, everybody who's in the middle, they have camera angles of them where they're just looking back and forth like they're watching a tennis match. And I love those reaction shots so much.
Obviously, Bob the drag queen is the most shocked of everybody here right now because you can tell that she's having a hard time processing in real time that Boston Rob is about to put the nail in her coffin. That's it. A traitor is turning on a traitor. And we're only on episode 4. This is day 3 in the castle?
Maybe, yeah.
At one point, Bob says with her whole chest, I swear to God, I'm a faithful. That's all I'm going to say. Those words, that's it. And then Rob says, well, I have 2 words. You're not.
You're not. See, I don't think Dylan would have been able to come up with a rebuttal as simple and to the point and clear as that.
I think the thing that really did it for everybody was when Rob said, if we vote you out tonight and you are a faithful, then you all can get rid of me next time.
And that is the best gambit that you can run with. I wrote that down earlier in the episode. Unrelated. There was some other conversation thing that was happening, but I think it was if you're going to go up against somebody or if you're going to make an accusation, that's basically the only thing that you can claim as a faithful is if it's not this person, I'm going in with this as this person. If it's not them, then I'm not going to accuse anybody else or you're going to, come after me next week.
I'm sticking my neck out.
Your whole reputation is hinging on this. I feel like that would be a fair way to do that too, is like if I had an accusation, people voted that person out and they weren't a traitor, I would not be making any other accusations.
I'm not sure if that was the smartest thing for him to say though.
It was risky because then, that made it seem like it was too certain, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was what caught the attention of some of the gamer guys.
They are starting to clock that.
Yes.
It's time to vote.
And Danielle doesn't want to vote Bob. She still says that she doesn't, but she knows it'll look super suspicious if she doesn't vote for Bob. Because at that point, I was like, well, then why don't you just do Nikki or Sierra and just do a throwaway vote then? Because most people seem to be going for Nikki. So if you really didn't want to vote for Bob,
you got to stay on Rob's good side.
Yeah, I think that was what she was realizing was, oh my gosh, Rob was able to take Bob out just like that. I need to make sure I'm in alignment with him.
So as far as the other traitors go, Boston Rob, Carolyn, and Danielle all vote for Bob the drag queen. They all turned on Bob.
So I did not expect that for all of them, but Danielle did end up voting for Bob too. Bob is leaving clues behind, though, for the remaining faithfuls after this, because I think Bob sees the writing on the wall after the first few votes start coming up, too. And just based on how the conversation went, I think it was pretty clear that the vote was going for Bob. So Bob decided to vote for Rob, which that's always a clue for a traitor. Whoever the traitor votes for as they're leaving, it's always someone interesting to look at.
Okay, but the faithfuls do that too. They will vote for the person who accused them.
Correct, but the trick here being that Bob has to stand in the circle of truth before leaving and say, I'm a traitor. And so then Bob was a traitor and voted for Rob, who came after her with absolute certainty, maybe a little too much certainty. So that is the last gasp sort of approach as a traitor who's been betrayed, is to leave them with a name.
There are still some not everybody at the round table is convinced that it's Bob. We have some votes for
Nikki.
Sierra, some votes for Nikki.
It's still split that way a little bit. What I was confused, I don't know how the gamers all voted differently, because Rob voted for Bob the Drag Queen, and then it was a split between Nikki and Sierra for Wes and Derek.
I think that's fine, though, because if they do really have some type of alliance for towards the end of the game, you don't want to look like you're a voting block together at the beginning.
And I mean, they were making it abundantly clear that they were sticking together coming into this game. So maybe this is just a way to...
It's a long con. That's what they're playing.
To throw people off that they're not completely in alignment. Because Rob, the first person that he went and talked to about, I think, going after the head of the dragon, he was telling Wes. And Wes didn't vote with him on it. So that's kind of crazy. You know what it might have been? It might have been because Rob did the campaigning and then he realized, I have enough numbers, so you guys don't need to. If it's looking like...
Maybe that's
if
true,
you can tell that this person isn't going to vote that way, then I'll need you to, but otherwise don't. So I think it was maybe Rob was able to secure enough other votes elsewhere. But even the way I was counting it out, I thought we had 8 going in, and it was not the 8 that I thought that was going to be voting.
It's pretty much a landslide.
It's enough where, it wasn't down to the wire. I mean, it was a decent split there between Sierra and Nikki.
Yeah, partway through like the middle of the table, it started seeming like, I don't know, maybe we're all over the place.
It might be close.
The further they got, the more sure and obvious it became that Bob the Drag Queen was going home.
So Bob is banished. Bob has to go to the Circle of Truth. Bob has the farewell speech.
I've never told a lie. I swore to God, but I don't believe in God, so that's a loophole.
I'm a traitor.
I'm a traitor. No, and
well done.
I was going to say nobody's surprised.
Well,
we weren't surprised. The people watching weren't surprised. The people in the room screaming, throwing chairs over, celebrating. They cannot believe that Dylan and Rob led them in the right direction.
Now, Bob was so pleased with how she played the game, but I think it was only a matter of time before this was going to happen.
Oh, I think that Bob the Drag Queen came in and had a good thing going by being likable. But that's also what Phaedra had. And that's how Phaedra got as far as she did, was that people kept saying, no, it can't be Phaedra. We like Phaedra. We enjoy having Phaedra around.
Phaedra was less involved, though.
Yes.
She wasn't trying to be a leader, and Bob was absolutely trying to be a leader of the faithfuls while being a traitor, which that is terrible, terrible thing to do.
That's a great point. That's the big difference between them. And really, in the beginning, remember, Phaedra spent a lot of time acting confused.
And it was, Phaedra never spoke to the other people who were traitors. So she had almost like her clique, and then she stayed completely separate from the other people. She didn't want any heat. She didn't want anybody suspecting her for anything.
I wonder if Bob thought that having so many people on her side was going to be the thing that allowed her to play a little bit more forward.
You can't do that with 4 traitors, though. I think that was the other spot where you had to make an adjustment, because maybe with 3 traitors, you have a little bit of leeway to do that. But with 4 traitors, now it's getting dangerous. Your numbers are shifted around a little bit. There's not as many faithful that you can just have manipulated all the time.
Coming after Boston Rob was obviously the big mistake. And also, I do think that it was just a matter of time anyway, because there's too many personalities, big personalities in the turret right now between Boston Rob and Bob the Drag Queen.
Danielle seems to be very convinced that she's playing an excellent game as well, which she is not, because I don't know if she knows this, but there's a ton of people who suspect her to be a traitor, but then they haven't been able to go after that with any certainty. So that's the only reason why she's gone this long without being addressed in roundtables, I think. Danielle's probably going to crack under roundtable discussion because now she doesn't have Bob there to defend her, to chime in on something and speak for her. I think that's going to be a big issue for her.
Well, I think too, there was the confidence of having the traitors sticking together. And now there's this whole question of, well, can I even trust the other traitors that I'm playing with? I obviously can't trust Boston Rob.
The Faithfuls seem to think that they can trust Boston Rob at this point, but that is only illustrating to the traitors that you absolutely cannot trust Boston Rob at this point, because then that was what, even if Dylan had brought this up and Rob didn't have to speak to the extent that he did at this roundtable, Dylan put all of the credit back to Rob because people were trying to congratulate Dylan after the vote and great job on finding the traitor. You did this, Dylan. And he said, whoa, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for Boston Rob, my guy who came to me and he made sure everybody in the house was voting for Bob the Drag Queen. Uh-oh. Like, yeah, that's not good.
Also, why would you do that, Dylan?
Oh, no, that's great. That is good for Faithful. And yes, Faithfuls need to know that, yes, this idea originated with Boston Rob, but that looks terrible for Boston Rob with the traitors because the traitors know everything of what's going on.
I just think it shows that Dylan's really naive in that he's absolutely convinced that Boston Rob is a faithful because he helped him get rid of Bob the Drag Queen.
Yes, exactly. Doesn't realize that he's being manipulated, he's being utilized to further Rob's game and further the placement here. And
he also thinks that they're in an alliance now.
Because then we hear some of Dylan's other great theories of who he's got next on the board, which is Gabby and Bob Harper. So, nope.
This always happens whenever there's somebody who nails the first traitor, their instincts about everyone else completely wrong. Your gut's off. You should take a probiotic, in the words of Lisa Barlow.
It's leaking. Dylan turns out to be a one-hit wonder. He is not on a hot streak by any means at all.
The other side conversation that happens is everybody's sitting around. Tom is there. And Tom is talking about how he is just so enamored by Boston Rob. Anytime that Boston Rob speaks from now on, his ears are going to perk up and he's going to listen because this guy knows what's going on.
He knows what's up because he went after Bob the Drag Queen with absolute certainty. Like, he knew that Bob was a traitor. And Wes has to take a moment to ponder and say, how do you know if someone is a traitor with absolute certainty? And it takes Ivar and Tom about 4 guesses to realize what Wes is implying with this question.
Which is hopefully obvious to everyone else that only the traitors know who the other traitors are. So if you're going to come to a round table and be absolutely sure that someone is a traitor, it's only because you have seen them in the turret with you.
Ah, I hadn't thought of that. Is basically what Tom and Ivar's assessment is. But Wes finally gets around to it of explaining it to them. I think he probably had to draw a picture, a couple of illustrations, maybe some diagrams that he could reference for them later.
Things are looking real bad for Boston Rob at the end of this episode. Now we've got Wes telling people that that's a big red flag, that he was so confident. And then we have Danielle, who has decided she has to take this man out of the game. We can't trust him anymore. We're going to have to be silent assassins, and we're going to have to come for Boston Rob next.
But she is definitely out of her element because, again, she thinks she's playing a way better game than she actually is. So I don't think she's going to be as covert about this as she thinks she is, but she is going to try to drum up some suspicion about the new guys, the 3 gamers who were added late. So maybe if she talks to Wes, she might figure out that he's on to Boston Rob and then she can let him run with that. But it's going to get tricky.
Yeah, unfortunately, Wes has a shield, so he cannot be murdered the next time they come together in the turret.
And Danielle's looking for answers in the turret as they meet up here, but we don't get to see that conversation. It's left off on the cliffhanger for the murder. We don't know who they're going to murder, and we don't know what the traitor response is going to be to the backstabbing that has taken place in the round table.
Do you think that Rob played a little too hard too early?
I think this was one of those plays where if you don't have the numbers for it this week, you're definitely not going to have the numbers for it next week. So I think he took this opportunity because this was his best chance that he had. Somebody who was going to get banished was probably going to be Nikki or Sierra, and then they were going to have to do a murder before the next round table. So somebody else who was suspicious of Bob probably would have been murdered tonight.
I think the fatal flaw in this plan was not having Dylan be the one to bring up Bob's name. That's going to be a big problem. At least that's my prediction.
Honestly, that's what I'm saying is the interesting thing here for the gamers. The gamers know when you need to get rid of someone, and then they do it. They do go overly aggressive where then they aren't able to cover their tracks. So that was something that was forced. Boston Rob had to push for that in a matter of hours between the mission and the round table. Not even, probably a couple hours over lunch.
Why wouldn't you tell Dylan, though, look, man, I can't be the one to do it because I'm still new. I'm one of the most recent people who came into the house. I kind of have a reputation from being on Survivor. I feel like if I'm too loud at the round table about someone that I'm going to catch a lot of heat.
So I need you to bring it up. I can back you up.
Well, and Dylan brought it up last week. Dylan came for Bob the Drag Queen last week at the round table.
So would that have been worse, though? Because like we said, if misinformation's bringing it up 2 weeks in a row, then that's going to be
misguided. Now she's misinformation. Might as well be.
That would have been her name this week. Yeah.
Who would you murder? Last question.
Oh, man. Yeah, we would have to decide.
We have a lot of people who have shields. That's going to be a real problem for them.
Yeah, that's tough.
So who doesn't have a shield? Do you have a list?
Derek doesn't have one, and he's one of the gamers. So I feel like that might be a route to go, potentially, because if you want to disrupt, because a lot of people are thinking that there is an alliance between the gamers, too.
But do you want to get rid of Derek? Because he's one of the 3 people. Now you've removed someone from suspicion.
Right.
So I think you
want to leave
keep
those.
him.
So the people who are not safe are Sierra, Carolyn, but Carolyn's a traitor, so she's fine. So it's Sierra, Nikki, Ivar, Robin, Sam, Gabby, or Derek. I mean, Sam.
All terrible choices.
Sam would be. I keep forgetting he's on the show. I forgot he didn't have a shield.
What's the point in getting rid of him? There's no point in getting rid of him. Like, there's nothing strategic about that.
All of the suspicion, though, is still on Sierra and Nikki, so you want to keep that going. You don't want to eliminate Derek because Derek is one of the 3 gamers, so then that would remove suspicion from
I don't like
group.
how this is going because it feels like it's going to be Gabby, and I don't want it to be Gabby.
It's looking like it's Ivar, Robin, Sam, Gabby is where I would be. Robin, I would not because she is a shield and a half for the Traitors. So I would say Sam, Ivar, Gabby is what we're down to. What has Ivar done? I mean, Ivar's kind of...
No, I feel like you have to get rid of Gabby then because Gabby is part of the... Well, she's kind of on to you guys. She said a few things at breakfast that were concerning. And also she's part of the Bambis. And Nikki's part of the Bambis. So do you try to make it like, oh, Nikki murdered her to get rid of a friend so it looked like it wasn't her to detract attention?
It looks like that would be the strategic play if we were doing it. But we have been wrong about every single murder that they've picked so far. So our reasoning, our line of reasoning is not the way they've been playing this game.
Yeah, so they'll probably go for Nikki or Sierra.
Yeah, one or the other, because then it was like, oh, you voted against me, or yeah, you were the person that I was up against at the round table, because that's how they think this game is played. They're playing checkers. We're playing chess over here.
Well, until next week, we are going to be anxiously awaiting the next episode. This is the hardest part. Even though having 3 episodes together to recap was hard, it's worse waiting week to week to see the things that they leave for cliffhangers.
Yeah, if you're binging these episodes, I would recommend that you wait until they're like going to a mission or something, and then that's where you stop. Because if you're watching the end of an episode, you have to keep watching into the next episode. I can't stop watching the show if we're watching a whole season in a row. So you have to make your own exit points where you can find your jumping out points. So that's my recommendation if you're going back and watching older seasons or the other seasons, the other locations.
And just a reminder, if you want to listen to this episode ad-free and early, you can do that over on our Patreon, patreon.com/survivingpod. We also have a bunch of bonus content over there. We just recapped the third part, I guess the third season of Natalia Grace.
And it's the 5-year anniversary of our podcast. Well, not this podcast. This is a newer version. Surviving Reality is a newer version of our
another podcast. We have a second podcast.
Surviving Sister Wives.
That was the first podcast.
Yeah. Surviving Sister Wives.
You can head over there and listen to us talk about Sister Wives.
So we've got a 5-year podiversary celebration going on this month. Tons of giveaways, tons of fun stuff happening. Don't miss it.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.